My fiancé left me for a rapper the night before our wedding. Now she's begging for me back after he used her and left her stranded. I was 32 and thought I'd found the one. Sarah and I had been together for 6 years, and we were days away from getting married. We'd met through friends right after college. The timing was perfect, and we clicked immediately. She was charming, smart, and knew how to captivate a room. She had this way about her that made her feel almost larger than life, and I found myself drawn into her energy. Looking back, I wonder if I was more in love with the idea of her than the reality. Our wedding was meant to be small, just close friends and family on the beach, exactly as she'd always wanted. The night before, we had a rehearsal dinner with all our loved ones. But she was off, distracted, always on her phone. Every few minutes, she'd step out, claiming she needed to take important calls. I chalked it up to nerves. Everyone says wedding stress gets the best of you, right? So I ignored it, thinking she'd settle down by morning. Around 10 that night, she turned to me and said she needed some air. "I'll be right back," she promised. I figured she just needed a moment to herself and let her go. But that moment turned into hours, and when she still hadn't come back by the early morning, panic started to set in. I texted, called, and got no response. Her family was as confused as I was, and her friends had no clue where she'd gone. We were all waiting, wondering, hoping she'd walk back through the door. It was past noon, an hour after she was supposed to be walking down the aisle, when I finally got a text. "I can't do this," it read. That was it. No explanation, no face-to-face conversation, just a text. She was gone. The ceremony was in shambles, guests were consoling me, and her parents were furious and embarrassed. We all went home that day with no answers, just a strange, hollow feeling, like someone had ripped away the future I thought I was about to have. Days went by, and I was still in a daze, barely functioning, trying to process everything that had happened. Then, out of nowhere, a friend sent me a screenshot that blew it all open. It was Sarah. She was in Los Angeles, living it up at some celebrity's party, plastered all over social media with a rapper she'd followed obsessively for years. She looked ecstatic, like she hadn't just abandoned her fiancé and ghosted an entire wedding. Seeing those photos, her laughing and carefree while I was back home, humiliated, hit me hard. And then it started to make sense. This wasn't just a moment of cold feet or panic. She had left me for him, chasing some fantasy lifestyle she'd talked about for years. There had always been this part of her that craved something beyond the ordinary, always hinting at a bigger, more exciting life than the one we were building together. In hindsight, there were warning signs. Sarah was always dreaming of something more, something flashier. She wasn't interested in just having a stable, happy life with me. No, she wanted to be part of this power couple scene. She'd push for these over-the-top, staged photos of us, things that looked good on Instagram. She wanted the life that influencers had, the one that came with carefully curated moments and flashy vacations. I used to think it was harmless, just her way of expressing herself, but it always felt like we were putting on a show for strangers. She used to talk about the emotional labor she put into our relationship, claiming she was the one holding us together. She said she was the one supporting me, like her advice and ideas were some kind of sacrifice. Anytime she planned something, she made it sound like she was doing me a huge favor, as if a date or a small surprise was something I owed her for. If I didn't match her efforts with some big gesture, she'd turn cold, like I'd failed her. I started feeling like I was constantly trying to make up for some invisible debt, like her love was conditional on what I could give her in return. Then there was this bizarre sense of ownership she had over my successes. Every time I achieved something, a promotion, a personal goal, anything, she found a way to insert herself into it. "I was the one who pushed you," she'd say, or "you wouldn't have done that without my support." It was like she needed to take credit for everything, as if my life's accomplishments somehow reflected on her too. I never thought much of it, but looking back, it was another way she made sure I knew I owed her. She had rules for me that didn't apply to her. Early on, she laid down strict boundaries, especially when it came to other women. I was supposed to keep things professional, not get too close to female friends, and definitely not stay in touch with exes. Meanwhile, she'd meet up with old guy friends, keep in touch with past flings, and if I ever questioned it, she'd get defensive, calling me insecure or accusing me of not trusting her. The double standard was clear, but I'd convinced myself it was just the way she was. I told myself that everyone has their quirks, and it wasn't worth rocking the boat over. Whenever I had a rough day, she barely acknowledged it, brushing it off like my stress was just part of life. But when she had a bad day, the world stopped. I was expected to bring her food, give her space, sit with her for hours while she vented. If I didn't cater to her needs, she'd act like I was failing as a partner, but her empathy was only available when it suited her. It wasn't a partnership. It was me bending over backward to keep her happy, even when my needs didn't seem to matter. Weeks passed, and word got around that her new relationship hadn't lasted. The rapper had left her stranded, apparently dropping her off at some random hotel with a one-way plane ticket home, telling her that she'd been fun for a while, but he was done. The high life she'd abandoned me for had fizzled out, and she'd been left with nothing. Then, one night, just when I thought I'd finally started moving on, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find her standing there, looking exhausted, like she'd just been through hell. Without a word, she pushed past me into my apartment, dropped her bag, and sat on my couch, as if she still had some kind of right to be there. I stared at her, trying to process what I was seeing. "I know I messed up," she began, barely looking at me. "I got carried away. I wasn't myself, and I didn't know what I wanted." She went on, talking about how she'd realized the life she'd chased wasn't real, how she missed me, how I was the only real thing she'd ever had. She even started tearing up, like she was trying to play the sympathy card, waiting for me to forgive her, like we could just pick up where we left off. "You left me the night before our wedding," I said, my voice calm. "You didn't even have the decency to say it to my face. You ghosted me, humiliated me, and went off to live some fantasy. And now that it's blown up, you want to come back?" Her face tightened, annoyed. She didn't like being confronted, especially when she wasn't in control of the narrative. "I know I made a mistake, but I thought you'd understand. I just needed space." "Understand?" I replied, feeling a strange calm settle over me. "You thought I'd understand you leaving me at the altar? That I'd just wait around while you chased some dream?" She shifted, a flash of frustration in her eyes. "Are you really going to throw away everything we had over one mistake?" "One mistake." I looked at her, not hiding the disgust in my voice. "This wasn't a mistake, Sarah. This was a choice. You decided I wasn't enough, and you left me for someone else. And now you want to come back because it didn't work out." For a moment, I thought she'd apologize, admit she was wrong. Instead, she flipped it around like she always did. "I was always there for you," she said, her tone almost pleading. "Everything I did was for us. I supported you, pushed you, helped you become who you are. You didn't support me," I shot back. "You controlled me. You made me feel like I owed you for every little thing. And now that you need me again, you're back to calling it support." She scoffed, angry now, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "So I'm just this terrible person? You'd still be in that dead-end job if it weren't for me. I made you better, and this is how you thank me." I looked at her, feeling like I was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. "I don't owe you anything, Sarah. You've always made this about you, about what you could get out of me. And I'm done with that." She stood up, grabbing her bag, her face twisted with anger. "Fine. Go ahead, throw it all away. You'll never find someone who'll do as much for you as I did," she spat, heading toward the door. She gave me one last look, almost daring me to stop her, but I just stood there and watched as she left, closing the door behind her. I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me, as if finally, after years of bending and breaking myself to meet her demands, I was free. After she left, there was silence. It wasn't an empty silence, though. It felt peaceful, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The apartment was finally my own again, not just the space we shared under her terms. For the first time in years, I could sit in my own living room without feeling judged or manipulated, without feeling like I was constantly measuring up to some impossible standard. She tried calling and texting for days afterward, sending these long messages about how much I'd meant to her, how she was ready to fix things. She'd go on about how she was working on herself, but every message had this underlying tone of self-pity, as if she was still expecting me to play the role of the forgiving, patient boyfriend, ready to take her back whenever she decided it was time. I ignored every message. I didn't want to engage, to reopen that door I'd finally closed. I'd spent years wrapped around her finger, making excuses for her behavior, convincing myself that love was supposed to be this all-consuming, this intense. But I could see now that love wasn't supposed to feel like a constant uphill battle, where one person holds all the power and the other is left scrambling to keep up. A few months went by, and life started to get easier. Therapy helped a lot. I realized just how many little things I'd compromised over the years, how many boundaries I'd let her cross because I didn't want to rock the boat. Therapy made me see that her behavior wasn't normal or healthy, it was toxic. She'd made me feel like I was never good enough, like every achievement was something she'd allowed me to have, like every success was hers to claim. I started reconnecting with old friends, people she'd pushed away or made me feel guilty for spending time with. Some of them had tried to warn me about her, gently hinting that maybe she wasn't the best influence on my life. I'd brushed them off back then, thinking they just didn't understand her like I did. Now, I could see they'd been right. One evening, I ran into Sarah at a mutual friend's party. I hadn't expected her to be there, but I wasn't about to leave just because she was. I'd built a life that didn't revolve around her anymore, and I wasn't going to give her that power back. She looked different, hardened, or maybe just worn out. She seemed uncomfortable when she saw me, giving me this tight smile before turning away. It was strange to see her like that, no longer the vibrant, magnetic person I'd once been so captivated by. She looked like she was holding on to something that had already slipped through her fingers. I stayed at the party, chatted with friends, laughed, and felt like myself. For once, she wasn't the center of my world, wasn't the voice in the back of my mind dictating how I should act or who I should talk to. She was just another person in the room, someone I'd once known but who no longer held any control over me. As the night went on, a sense of closure settled over me. She was my past, a lesson learned, and nothing more. There was no anger, no bitterness, just relief. I'd finally let go. I left the party with a new sense of peace, realizing I was ready to move on completely. I was done giving her the power to dictate my life, done letting her define my self-worth. She was just another chapter in my life, one that I'd read and closed for good. Looking back, I can see that everything I went through with her taught me something important about myself. I learned that love isn't about control, isn't about bending until you break just to keep someone else happy. Real love doesn't come with conditions, with demands, or with the constant expectation that you owe someone just for being with them. I'd spent years trying to fit myself into her version of love, trying to keep up with her expectations. But now, I was finally ready to start fresh, to build a life that wasn't defined by someone else's demands or expectations. I was ready to find my own path, one where I could be truly happy and free. And I knew deep down that I'd never go back to that kind of relationship again.